Welcome to Parev-TV. It is Sunday, December the 27th. We'd like to wish all our viewers a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And we are very, very happy to have a very special interview with a very seasoned American-Armenian journalist, very well known LARA SETRAKIAN, who is joining us from Armenia. LARA, it is a pleasure and a great honor to have you on our program. We'd like to thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedule and talking to us. LARA, throughout your career, you have helped us make sense of a very complex world. You have reported on ABC, you have reported on Bloomberg Network, from Syria, from Lebanon, Egypt, Iran, throughout the Middle East, and now you are in Armenia. More recently, many have read your mega threads, as you call it, about Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Turkey, and many share what you write on social media. Many thank you for your reports, and obviously many have many questions about the overall situation in Armenia today. In many of your reports, LARA, you ask fellow Armenians to help make a dark situation a little bit less dark. And one of the questions I have, is when we ask you, what should or what could we do to make this world, make Armenia less dark?
I love that question. It's a really special time to reframe your relationship with a broken world and with the disappointment. I can't have more compassion. I literally could not have more compassion. I'm at my max compassion for what everyone, I feel like I see it in your eyes, Barton. I feel like I see in your eyes what your 2020 must have been like. You've devoted your life to this program. You've devoted your life to a conversation about our community, which is basically community building, like you. But you really stand out for me. I was on your show 21 years ago when I was 17, give myself away, at the election of this Verapar, talking to you about that. You've given your life, and consistently, and so many. I mean, the people who pass the collection plate at church, the people who go to Camp New Bar, the people, and so the degree of letdown and disappointment, heartbreak. I mean, we have been dealt a world of pain in the past 3 months. And that is transcending, of course, political views. It's also transcending your function. I'm here. I didn't think I would move. I moved to Armenia in January to work on environmental infrastructure, and I do some journalism, but, just to give back. I had a moment of clarity a few years ago where I felt that I would not be right with myself if I didn't give back whatever I learned along the way to the countries where my parents come from, Lebanon and Armenia. I didn't think it would take this form, but when the coronavirus kicked off, we were living in Hong Kong. And I thought, this isn't where I want to be, Hong Kong. This isn't where I want to be in the middle of this pandemic. Whatever comes, you can't outrun a pandemic, but I thought I want to be with my family in Armenia, help out there, ride this out in Armenia. And so that's how I got here. And so it's gotten dark, of course. It's gotten dark in our hearts and in our minds. And there were, during the war, so many sleepless nights. And so when I think of someone like you, and I think of how tired we all are after these few months, there are a few next steps that for me feel rational. Oh, here comes my daughter. She's going to get upset that I'm here. Yes, honey? Sorry, I tried to isolate myself, everybody on the show.
Took my best.
I'm so sorry.
And we see her.
Do you want to say hi to everybody?
No.
Okay. It's okay. She's not. You have to stop. You have to stop, honey.
Mom.
So
Mom.
one is, of course, being with our families.
Mom.
But another is holding each other's hands and being here for each other, right? So when we feel as tired as I say this with love and affection. You look great overall, but when we all feel as tired as you look, you know, and I was there yesterday. I just took some days to sleep it off. But when you look tired, Vartan, you look like I thought you would look, because you've been giving of yourself for many, 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 many years. And this year has made it so hard. I remember when you were honored. I remember the event where you were honored for your service. And I was like, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. So I think the first thing we have to do when it's so dark is connect and be there for one another. And that, you know, it's important to have a hand to hold, and maybe a different, sure, I will open down here. Okay. So it's important even to have maybe a different hand to hold than you're used to. If there's someone you admire or an organization you admire, you know, a voice reaching out to someone different who understands what we're going through, and just to say hello or good job, or just to take one extra step to connect more than you would have. An old friend from Hyderabad, an old friend from Canada, just take one extra step to connect with one person in our community. That will extend your support network more than you realize. The act of love and care, of just saying hello, or just saying good job, Armenia Tree Project, good job, AWU, good job, ARS, whoever it is that you see them doing good. Just a little word of love will feel good to you. It'll feel good to them. It'll open a pathway for new conversations. It will, you know, I really think that's essential. Gratitude is a very good way to get yourself out of the dark. And it comes from an awesome and decent place, because a lot of people are doing great things to help the situation now. I have to tell you, Yerevan is not dead. No. There's a lot of life in the cities. There's a lot of life even in the shopping malls. And it's not stupid hope. It's not stupid materialism. It's giving their kids a good time. It's feeling the Christmas spirit. It's still wanting to buy some nice Armenian dried fruits or products, or, you know, there's so many great Armenian products now. There's great Armenian fashion. There's cute tea. Gifting each other things that are made here for Christmas. Like, it's a joyous thing to do. So people are doing it, you know. I think that's the first most important thing, is just being the gift of one's presence.
Lara, if I may just ask you, you know, you have reported from many countries. You are a very seasoned journalist. There's no question about that. In many of the other reports, you have moved into the politics and economics of the country. In this case, you're asking us to hold a very small, tiny candle when there is total darkness, if I may use total darkness after what you said about Yerevan. But my question is, are you doing enough? Are we doing enough to really, really give the report as it should be given?
I'm new to this. For a few answers to that. Well, I don't think there's a lack of discussion of the political situation. So, like, I don't think there's a lack of coverage of this critical situation here. I do think there's a lack of broader, big picture coverage of the situation here. What does it mean geopolitically? What does it mean in the long run? I'm still learning. I have to be honest, Vartan. When I went to Egypt, or I'm in the middle of a revolution, I had a mandate to cover the politics and the fallout of that. In this situation in Armenia, I try to. They're hair ties, honey. I'm really sorry, Vartan.
Please. It's very natural. It's very normal. Thank you for it.
They're kids. I thought they were playing downstairs. I thought they were all together.
It's good. It's beautiful to hear the kids.
So she will always find me. So we don't lock doors in our house. It's just like a rule. So here in Armenia, I'm experiencing it a little bit differently than when I was reporting. Well, a lot differently than when I was reporting on Egypt. I'm doing a lot of volunteer work that's capacity building, or trying to plan for a great summer 2021. Right. We're working on a conference. We're working on retreats, how to make it, for those families who want to come visit for the summer for 1 month, 2 months, how to organize all the activities for the kids under 12. They can do tennis camp and art camp and music camp. Yeah, so we're working on a think tank. We're working on projects. We're working on how to get people here next summer to make sure they have the best time ever, that they can come stay here for 1 or 2 months.
Bravo.
Easily find a great agent for finding an easy, all the things that I had to do and others have to do, but much easier, just smoothing the road. Giving some of the travel agents here who've been out of business work to do, like paying for them to develop this stuff.
Absolutely.
So I've been more so as a coping strategy also, because the politics are so depressing and it's so frustrating. I personally just, for my own sanity, I try to focus on the project work I'm doing as much as possible. And then I do take notes on things I think we should cover, but I don't think there's any lack of debate over the leadership politics, when Pashinyan should resign, whether there should be, when the snap elections should be. And plus, like, I don't enjoy partisanship in the Armenian context. I don't enjoy partisanship in the American context, gotta be honest. I much more enjoy the focus on community building and projects and development. So, but as a community, what should we be? Yeah, should we be, what I think we should be doing more of is, what impact does, at these, I'm just learning, I'm not an expert at all on Armenia or Karabakh, Artsakh, I'm learning. But the things that I pick up on that are super consequential, you know, one example, with the loss of certain territories in Karabakh, Artsakh, we've lost a major hydropower plant. What's the impact on Armenia's energy sector? So I put two people together a few days ago, one Armenian in the diaspora who invests in energy, one here who works on energy. I don't know anything about it, but I know person A wanted to learn about it, person B knows about it. So I put them together to discuss it. I just had the pleasure of listening in. So I do think there are bigger picture questions, like, okay, right now, the Armenian political establishment and security establishment is going back through Moscow, almost like return to the Soviet days. Everyone wants to be seen as favored by Moscow. They're making trips to Moscow. Is that a temporary thing? Is it a long-term thing? It's understandable, but like, what does that mean for the long-term trajectory? What other relationships does Armenia need to build? You know, so I think there's a lot of smart coverage that can and should be done, a lot of smart conversations that can and should be done about the implications of this moment and what we want to build, and more aspirational. There's a huge huge solar power facility being built. I was just hearing about it today in the village of Tallinn, which is super underdeveloped. It's a rural, I guess it was technically rural, but if you drive to Gyumri, it's a town that needs jobs, it's a town that needs capacity. And I believe the UAE has invested heavily. Masdar, the big clean energy company of Abu Dhabi, has invested. I never knew that. Super interesting, right? Yeah. Apparently already there's super high-tech, sustainable water irrigation that the wine sector is doing. Vahe Kashgarian, the godfather of the wine industry in Armenia, has already been doing super high-tech water stuff to, you know, Armenia doesn't have a water problem right now. We'd like to keep it that way. Wouldn't it be terrible if on top of the current things, it's 2050 and Armenia does have a water problem because we didn't use the water well, the water correctly, you know, efficiently. And so I'm much more interested in those sorts of coverage areas right now. I'm more interested in them as a volunteer, trying to accelerate and understanding, okay, I know this guy, Armenian or not, somewhere out in the world who's the expert. AUA asked me to help them develop a proposal for a media lab in the springtime. I had a great time looking at their proposal, thinking about who I know at MIT and UMass and University of Arizona, who are at, you know, doing the top of their game in AI and media or data science and journalism. And so plugging them into AUA to help think about how they include those dimensions in the AUA Media Lab. It's so satisfying, and there's so much good work to be done. There's so many good people to do it with. So that's kind of my life right now.
Lara, you speak about your work, and I know you're doing much more than humanly possible. One area is I would like to discuss with you, and because there's so much we can discuss, is that the 44-day war was also a media war. 44-day media war. You are in media. You know the importance of media. You know the role it plays. My question to you, isn't it time for the diaspora, within the diaspora, to come out of this 1950 mentality or structure and modernize this media platform we should adopt to conquer the world or be heard in this world? What can be done, or is there enough being done? Anybody is thinking about that?
You know, I think a lot of people are thinking about it. It hasn't yet been a structured inquiry. There could be a really effective workshop, project, working group on this. And I think some of the insights it's not that they would surprise people, but some of it ranges, some of it is quite rudimentary. I do think the people of Artsakh, Karabakh, and the story of it was not, when I say we here, let me put myself in the Armenian we for the sake of that answer, okay? And yes, I do feel culpable, but also just like generally, right? This isn't about we didn't do enough or we're terrible. No. We're just just looking at missed opportunities and in the context of what can be done better.
Yes.
I don't think Armenians told the story of Karabakh
Absolutely.
for the 30 years since the last war. I also think we didn't understand fully. It's very important. It doesn't mean anything negative or anything. You're not losing anything to understand. When I say understand the Azerbaijan story or the Azeri side, I'm not talking about taking one as the truth and not. I'm saying if you don't understand what their story is, it's gonna smack you upside the head. And so what happened is they were very good at telling their story.
Very good.
They told their story to everyone who would listen for 26 years. We did not tell our story and we didn't hear their story.
Mm-hmm.
So then when the narrative in the major media came out and telling so much of the Azeri story, some of the Armenian experience was, what the heck is that story?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like even if you didn't ever want to agree with it, just knowing that that was their side of the story would have helped understand, okay, so that you can go ahead and explain yourself a little bit better, right? Or understand the context that was missing. And I felt it. I mean, I try to be a person of goodwill. And this guy I don't see myself at all in a Twitter argument with him, but he insulted me on Twitter. This guy at an Azeri think tank, former ambassador, accused me that I'm not fair, I'm one-sided.
Yeah.
But I invited him to an interview in October 3rd at the start of the war, and he wouldn't talk to me. And you're one side. I'm like, you don't know me. How could you say that about me? One thing was like, this is not a war with the people of Karabakh. This is a war between Azerbaijan and Armenia. I'm like, you'd like to think that, wouldn't you? Mm-hmm. But you've also got native indigenous residents. You don't want to see this as an indigenous rights issue. It's much more convenient for you to cast this as Armenia's an aggressor. They've come in and occupied our territory. You may be pushing that in the Western world, but there's an indigenous rights issue here. You've got indigenous residents of Karabakh. That story of the indigenous rights of the people of Karabakh, the right, which was a major issue in past negotiations, whether or not they get to be at the table on their own fate, whether or not they have protection if they're residents, they're getting downgraded from having a semi-autonomous, pretty safe Soviet existence to being super vulnerable as to citizens of Azerbaijan with no safeguards. Mm-hmm. That story was never told properly. Mm-hmm. Armenians never told it. And then by the time this war started, the whole Western media is conditioned to a version of the story that cuts off crucial context, crucial elements. Absolutely. And frankly, I mean, one would have to study this. And I think it's worth studying. Some PhD student somewhere in the world, maybe at AUA, I don't think they have a PhD, but some student in media studies who cares about analyzing this ought to round up all of the coverage in 3 newspapers, the New York Times, the Guardian, blah, 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 and count how many civilians on each side were heard. How many voices were heard? Because it seemed at the time like all the civilian voices were on the Azeri side. Some newspapers, like all the compassion, all the civilian compassion stuff was on the Azeri side, and all the like bad, mean stuff was on the army side. Is that really true? Let's take a look. But that says something. Instead of just being upset about the coverage, study it, analyze it, and then you can go back and say, hey, how can you only cover civilian human stories on one side? That's what struck me as odd as a journalist. The thing that seemed most unfair was when certain publications wouldn't cover the civilian story on both sides, because that's really important. The human impact is what helps people understand a war and make sense of it.
Correct.
And so it's quite unfair if you don't tell the human story on both sides. Mm-hmm. And the broader context, about the referendum, about people wanting, yearning to breathe free, and then of course, I get it. It's a complicated world. If you take as a given that there are residents of this enclave who voted before the fall of the Soviet Union for their own autonomy, their own independence, who were given as, frankly, an act of malice that this was placed in Soviet Azerbaijan at the time. It's a true quandary. It ought to be seen as a real problem to be solved, not some black and white, easy peasy. Armenia is occupying our territory. Now we're going to smack them down by all means necessary. And the more negative, the more the world sees one side as the good guy and the other side as the bad guy, the more they will tolerate the worst of weapons and the worst of tactics being used, you know? And so it's very important. And I think so partially, I mean, Armenians do have to get better at telling their own story. And screaming at the internet, as to quote one wonderful Armenian psychologist said, you know, screaming at the internet doesn't get you very far. Like you actually have to figure out, well, where is the information gap? And what can we do to close the information gap? And here's the kicker that a lot of minorities in the world struggle with. I've seen a lot in the Middle East.
Sure.
The more calmly and rationally you make your point, the more effective it will be, which is really hard when everyone is very emotional. But the emotion is super justified. It's right that you feel that one feels that emotion. But when it comes time to communicate what was missing from that journalist's piece, the more rationally you do it, the more likely it is to be heard in a letter to the editor or even in a tweet to say, hey, if you feel that reporter John, reporter Mary wasn't fair in that article, and you say, hey, reporter Mary, you only covered the civilian casualties here, or you only spoke to civilians here, and here you only talked about, so, you know, that doesn't seem quite fair. Next time, please. The more rationally you communicate with a journalist, the more likely they're going to take a second look and maybe correct that deficit. If you just scream at them on the internet and say, you're biased, you're a lobbyist, you're a spy, it's like, guess what? They're going to tune that out, and they're not going to take into account the substance of what you're trying to get through. So,
yeah. Lara, you know, we can go on discussing many issues, and you speak passionately about any question I raise. Let me tell you that in a few days, we are going to greet 2021. It was a very difficult year. There's no question, not only the pandemic, we all know about the Beirut blast, how it taxed us. We know about the war in Armenia. What is your message to the people? What is your message to the people as we greet the new year?
we will fix this.
We'll fix this.
Don't worry.
Bravo.
We will fix this. We have good people, great people, building a better future. Rest, take care of yourself. You must be exhausted. You know, there's something called pathological productivity. I never knew that. During the war, I think everyone was so eager to help. So many people, they just couldn't sit still. Hard to focus on work, hard to do anything but try to help in some way, whatever you can get your hands on to be helpful, whatever you can give. I remember in the middle of the war, I wrote these reports, and my friend wrote back, she said, you have everything. You have my energy, you have my paycheck, you have everything. I'm like, oh, my dear. Oh, that is so, I know which part of your heart that's coming from, like the deepest layer. You know, take stock, rebuild, replenish your bank account, replace your savings, rest. There will come a time where you will know what is the work that is yours to do. Maybe you know already. Maybe you want to help Armenia Tree Project. I'm a big fan of theirs. Second time I mention them. They're just such a good example. But there are lots of good. Teach for Armenia, Armenian Volunteer Corps. Like maybe I have this dream of planting as many trees through Armenia Tree Project as there were soldiers who passed away. Wouldn't that be one of the many ways we could memorialize them in a creative, productive way that creates income and fruit and, you know, for other people to eat and thrive? There will, if you may already know your calling to help this world, Armenian context or non-Armenian context. If not, you will find your way. Just rest. Don't worry. We're going to fix this. Lots of countries have had great turnarounds. Ireland, Rwanda, Japan. We're going to study them. We're not letting this people fall into an abyss. We are not going anywhere. If there is 1 square mile of Armenia left, we will make it the best square mile in the world. There won't be much more than that. But if there were, that's my perspective. That is my sanity. That is my turbulence management system. I don't know what the politics are going to be. I don't know how it's going to play out. I don't know what's going to happen to Sunni province. I know what I hope, but I don't know what's going to happen. But I do know that if we have 1 square mile of Armenia left, we're going to make it the best, most sustainable Armenia that is possible. And there are good people here who are working on that. It's not.
Lara, your words are very, very comforting. I wish we could have you with us more often, because you understand you understand our language, you understand our mentality, you understand the culture you're talking to. And I don't think we have enough people who address this community so eloquently, so comprehensively, so intelligently as you are.
Thank you.
In closing, anything else? I don't want to drag this interview. In closing, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I love you.
I love you too, and I wish you the
I
best.
grew up with you, Vartan, and you say my community, this community, it's my community.
You're absolutely right.
I have a dream for our community. You want to hear it?
Yes, absolutely.
I dream that it will be a community of support and a community of celebration. That we will support one another. We will be a net for one another. We won't let each other fall into the abyss. And a community of celebration. Even in the darkest times, there is something to celebrate. If only the fact that 21 years later, you and I are having a conversation by video from Yerevan. I'm not driving to your studio from Englewood. Like, that's something. Is a glass of Kush Armenian champagne right now, I would raise it to you.
Lara, God bless you. God bless your family. The little kid next to you, where is she? I don't know if she's gone.
Better entertainment.
And thank you, Lara. That's all we can say. I wish you the best in the new year, and may your all wishes and dreams come true. Thank you very much.
Take care, John.